Well, that Conservative MP has defended his comments on food banks after saying people use them because they can't cook properly and can't budget. Speaking in the Commons yesterday, Lee Anderson invited MPs on the Labour benches to visit a food bank in his Nottinghamshire constituency, where people now need to register for a budgeting course and a cooking course.
When people come now for a food parcel, they have to register for a budgeting course and a cooking course. And what we do at the food bank, we show them how to cook cheap and nutritious meals on a budget. We can make a meal for about 30 pence a day, and this is cooking from scratch. I think you'll see firsthand that there's not this massive use for food banks in this country. We've got generation after generation who cannot cook properly, they can't cook a meal from scratch, they cannot budget. The challenge is there. Come, I'll offer anybody.
Well, those comments sparked a backlash, but Mr Anderson hit back, saying he didn't say poor people can't cook or there's no need for food banks. Instead, he said there is not the need currently being parroted by the mainstream media. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Andrew Falsey from the charity Feeding Britain. Andrew, if I could actually just read out exactly what Mr Anderson said. There's not a massive use for food banks in this country, but generation after generation who cannot cook properly, they can't cook a meal from scratch. What do you make of that?
I make two things of that. Firstly, it would be ludicrous to deny the importance of basic cooking and budgeting skills to people's daily or weekly existence. There should be a proper place for those skills to be acquired, honed and nurtured through the school curriculum in particular, and into adulthood if possible, because we're conscious those skills cannot and are not gained by osmosis. That being said, if you ask the pensioners, the disabled people and the families of children, both in and out of work, as we've heard, who seek our help, that will tell you that they're perfectly capable of cooking a decent meal from scratch. What they lack at the moment is enough money in their pockets to buy those ingredients, to put the cooker on, to keep the fridge running, while also keeping a roof over their heads.
So do you agree then with what he's doing in his constituency, having people taking up a course in budgeting and cooking, given what you've just said?
Well, it's an irony in the sense that while those comments were being delivered in the House of Commons, we at Feeding Britain were meeting with representatives within Mr Anderson's constituency, as well as 3 other parts of Nottinghamshire, to start building a programme that combines affordable food cooperatives with services like credit unions, wraparound help with benefits, debt, housing, cookery, and all sorts of things, to try wherever possible to prevent people having to seek help from a food bank in the first place. So we would love to discuss that in more detail with Mr Anderson and hopefully enlist his support.
It's interesting because what he said is something that challenged some people who listened and heard his comments. You know, we had home economics, domestic science when we were children. That's something that's not happening today. So on that basis, do you not think there is a call for people to maybe learn and better understand how to cook to help them if indeed they are struggling?
I do think there's a proper debate to be had around the role of those skills in the school curriculum. But if the question is actually how do we shorten the queues outside food banks in the here and now, the lessons of the past year show that the increase of £20 a week's universal credit, which was in effect for 18 months throughout the pandemic, did quickly and effectively, as well as efficiently, shorten those queues outside food banks. They freed up more money in people's budgets to buy and prepare the food they need, while also keeping on top of rent and other items of expenditure. So on that most immediate question of how do we prevent the need for food banks, I think universal credit offers the swiftest and most effective tool, but that's not to take away from the importance of those other community-led initiatives like ours and the role of skills in the curriculum.
And Andrew, are you seeing more people using food banks in this cost of living crisis?
Sadly, we are. Across our network, the increase in demand has ranged from between 30% to 100%. And we're seeing both a number of new faces for the first time who are having to seek our help, but we're also seeing a worrying increase in numbers of people having to come back week after week because their monies just will not stretch as far as they need. They're coming more frequently and they're having to take home larger quantities of food if they're to stave off hunger. So it's pretty grim.
Andrew Falsey from the charity Feeding Britain, so good talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.